I really need to figure out how to stitch videos again together. Dolphin Doug, Juneau, Alaska, showing you the town of Douglas. And now I'm going to show you the Homestead Park. This is a quick little tour that a couple of select tours will bring you over to this observation deck. This is the island of Douglas, and this is the overlook that people can go on if they want to see Juneau from across the channel. It's free and open to the public, and it's just a quick little stop beside the highway. And so bus drivers that have a little bit extra time or trying to do a city tour will very often come to this. Most buses don't come here because coming across the bridge and getting over here, it just takes it does take 10 plus minutes, even though it seems quick. If the cruise ships were in, there's a tank farm out here. Out here, there'd be a single cruise ship. That's called the AJ dock. You see the white bullards there. That's the Franklin dock, and it's primarily run by Princess, but it is the second private dock. And then you have the ability to put two more ships coming across the face. Right over here in this blue building is a float plane dock, and that's all nestled in. And then up on the hillside, you see those are that's the last little bit of evidence of the old mill site. This is Mount Roberts. There's the tram on top. There's the tunnels. It's a funicular that goes straight through the mountain, and it slopes uphill to the backside because most of the gold was on the backside of that mountain. And they put the ore in those cars and rolled it through here. It didn't take power because the cars loaded on the far end would pull the empty car up to the far side. And then they processed it through that mill, and then they dumped it all out here on this flat. You can't tell, but underneath that tank farm, it's a 1/4 mile wide of just rock that they pulled out of the mountain and piled up there. The tide's been going out all day. Tide goes roaring in and out of here. It's not dangerous, but we have a 25-foot tide. What is that, about 8 meters, something like that? And so this is Juneau. This is the whole town of Juneau, basically, right here. Now, the city of Juneau extends and includes Douglas, includes out the road, up north out the road, goes north on Douglas Island. There's a bunch of houses. We've got a ski area up on Douglas Island. And then it goes down Thane Road, and I just explored that. But Juneau is there because of the gold that used to be behind in the mountainside behind it. They pulled everything they could out with hydraulic dredges and processed a huge amount of gold in the early 1880s. Juneau's gold rush isn't nearly as famous as Skagway's because Skagway's happened in 1897, and in 1897 the United States was in a huge economic downturn. So the idea of being able to get gold was a magnificent opportunity. Whereas in 1880, when Juneau hit it, everything was booming down south and people didn't pay attention. And so, yes, Juneau boomed, but it didn't get the fame. It didn't have the newspaper attention. It wasn't part of the news cycle. I don't know what was going on in 1880 at the time. I'd have to think about that because we had 1849, California, gold rush down there. It was a huge impact on America. Wasn't quite as big of a news cycle because probably the news industry hadn't quite caught up to it. But that made the huge difference that put the transcontinental railroads in. Civil War, and then you have 1880s. Have to think about the heritage of that. But this happened. Juneau was the first place it was discovered. But when you have gold miners in a district, the first thing they do is go look for more gold. So in Juneau, they went all over the place, and there were mines opened everywhere, and the ruins are still a little bit left today. They get buried up really quickly. Things grow up so fast in this rainforest. I'm walking on this. This is pressure-treated wood. It's trafficked quite a bit. It is slicker than bare nose grease right there, and I wouldn't call it great traction here, even though there's a good amount of traffic that comes. And then we have these wonderful devices. I don't know if you've seen this, but this is just a great way of going. They're in metal treads, as strong as can be, and they've got good traction no matter how long it's been since somebody's walked on them. So that's something that I don't know, down south you have somewhat, but you can see there's spikes on here. If you've got somebody who likes going barefoot, they might not be quite as happy, but I tell you what, if you don't have that stuff, you're gonna wish you did. This stuff, this is Alaska. It's not ponderosa pine. Ponderosa pine you can stick your nose up to and smells like vanilla. But you can tell this, if I grab this thing, it's gonna spike me. It's very, very spiky right there. That's spruce. Spruce hurts you. Sitka spruce, wonderful for building anything because it's a very lightweight and it's a very lightweight wood with very good strong grain. Now this tree looks very similar, but if I were to grab it, there's no spiky at all. This is hemlock, western hemlock. Sitka spruce and western hemlock of our evergreen trees is easily 90% and probably 99% of everything that's around here as far as the evergreens go. You can see the deciduous trees, and there are actually lots of bushes down here. Some of these are blueberry bushes. The leaves are off of everything. Those yellow leaves are blueberry bushes. Blueberries bushes get really sparse underneath the trees. You don't get very many blueberries from them. And honestly, Alaska's famous for blueberries. We have lots of them. They're not the best blueberries. They just don't have the flavor. It's not the sweetness, it's the flavor that they don't have. I'm not trying to fault them, but if you've ever tasted a real strawberry, you would know that they're strawberries that aren't as real. That's just the way I always find with my blueberries from Alaska. They're good, not great. So, now we're going to see the town of Douglas. Look at that. Again, if you could be so lucky. Douglas Island Bible Church. Dang. I got a Bible church named after me. Jeez. I need to just turn off the fame. Turn off the fame. I don't need it. What are the three things you need in this world? Time, money, and imagination? Or is it fame, power, and money? Something like that. Anyway, 2 out of 3 is not bad. Still got to figure out which one I have, though. If I'd gone up that hill, you get to a fancy newer subdivision and some open lots. And amazingly, I was born and raised in Florida. Amazingly, from my perspective, if you look around Juneau, you see some really steep driveways. And we have some of the worst driving conditions in the world on a regular basis an awful lot of the time. It freezes and thaws and rains in a random cycle throughout the winter. And so we get black ice on the roads. Now they spread chemicals everywhere they can, and people with steep driveways try to take care of them, and it's amazing how well we get along, even though the weather is just nuts. If you're from down south and haven't lived up here in a place like this in the wintertime, then it's probably something that just doesn't make sense to you. And I agree with that, but a Florida boy living up here, you see it, and every winter you get by and you think, well, that wasn't that bad. Do you need four-wheel drive? I have had times where my little two-wheel drive mini with studs on it, a fun thing to have. I keep in my mind, I'm constantly saying, you don't need four-wheel drive, just put studs on. This past winter, We had 3 or 4 snowfalls. I couldn't get my Mini out of the driveway because it was plowing snow with the front air dam. So do you need 4-wheel drive? Well, you don't need a Mini. And it does get to a point, if you didn't have 4-wheel drive in Juneau, there'd be, even if you have a pickup truck like this is a 4-wheel drive truck. This thing's a billy goat. I put studs on it all the way around. It's wonderful. You just could drive around and play in the snow. And I had a ball this past winter working with my kids, teaching them how to drive in the snow. What better way to go? So this is Douglas. We just passed North Douglas. This is the town of Douglas. This has a post office. This has a library. This has a fire station. This has a single gas station. This has a restaurant or 2 that I know of. It has a bar that's not a restaurant and one that is. And that's pretty much it. I do not think there is a convenience store, although there was one just at the back up near the bridge. And this is a town that an awful lot of people live here and then commute over to Juneau every day to go work at the state office building right there downtown or at the federal building. This is just a nice get away a little bit community. Oh, it's got the beauty salon. What more do you need? It's got 1 automobile mechanic, and literally I think that's the only one here. Here's your 1 gas station, $5.09 for regular. It's nice. It's got a sense of community. They've kept it all these years. This is not Juneau. And for people that live in Juneau, it's a little bit of a trip. You want to check your gas gauge before you come over. It's got to be all of 4 miles, something like that. It's got this Montessori school up here, which is really, I've known kids that graduate from this. It's a glorious little thing. And then you get down at the south end of Douglas. See, Douglas was the bedroom community for the mines, the mills over here in Douglas. Someday I'll tell you about those. But then you get into this transition because this area is getting into stuff that was owned by the company. And so when the mines collapsed, they just kind of shut it down. There's still lots and lots and lots of gold left underneath in the ground. I don't know if that's a road in or not, but that's why you drive a truck. The problem is it's 2,000 feet below sea level, and the mines collapsed. That's a really interesting story. But here it's not the best view. You've got your boat harbor. This is a nice little boat harbor. And then you have this mountain. You cannot quite see the top. And just up there you can see the termination dust up there, that white. That's the first snow of the year. And so there's going to be more of it underneath this fog. But this whole big pasture, I've shown this a bit, that is a huge avalanche chute that comes down. There's a little tiny peninsula island on the far side of this harbor. And that waterfall in the wintertime, avalanches come right down to sea level. It shuts off the road to Thane, and if you look at my video on their drive to Thane, you'll see that avalanche chute from up close. It's a they actually take howitzers in the wintertime, and they fire rounds across the channel and into that mountainside up top, blasting the snow loose so that it won't block the road when they're not expecting it. This little island we're going to is an actual island, but they put a causeway over to it, and it's called that was Mayflower Island. And there's a nice little government facility, Coast Guard. I didn't know it was Coast Guard. Now everything keeps changing, but I've been to a museum on this island once. So anyway, here's that avalanche chute. You see it goes all the way down to the ground, and you can tell these patches of trees. That means there's been no avalanche there. Up top, the trees don't grow anywhere, although they should. And so what you're getting is a whole bunch of micro. You can look over here. You see the tram building at the top. Okay, you can't really see much of the tram building. That's just the upper end of the tram. There's a building beside it. They put that in the trees, up about as high as they could go. So the trees would grow up that high, except snow slides down these cliffs often enough to scrape it empty. That's what's going on here. And it's just, this is the one we call an avalanche chute because it goes all the way down to the water. There you go, life in Juneau. Don't have a girlfriend, maybe you can afford a boat. Heading back to Douglas Harbor. There are harbors on the Juneau side that I did not show you yet, but yeah, really nice to have a boat here in Juneau. This is the old boat ramp, launch ramp. They built a new one on the far side of the harbor, so it's kind of a cool place. I've seen kids go run down this thing to get wet. And there is, yeah, buy a boat, put it in here. Not the best fishing zone, not a good spot to go see whales from. You just can go back up the channel, which is just a straight shot. After the channel, there's good stuff. I put my boat in here all the time and go to things, but it's 30 miles away that I tend to go on those. So this is the end of the road, and I'm just gonna turn around and show you just another view of Juneau before we go. There's a wonderful series of very confusing walking trails past here that go through the old mine sites of the Treadwell mine. There's a series of mines just along the coast here. All of them found the ore was at sea level and down below. I don't actually know if much of it was above sea level, but they put these mine shafts literally 2,000 feet down 110 years ago. 105 years ago, that the mine system filled up with water, and that finished off the gold mining on the Douglas side of the channel. Nice native Tlingit totem. They're all telling a story. They're hard to interpret. You can look at the critters and try to decide what kind of animal that they're talking about. So I believe the stories start at the beginning and they work their way to the top. They're still carving these. This is a recently carved one. I have no idea what they're trying to tell you. Why there's a big gap there in the middle with no carving. What was going on here? I don't know. Find somebody else with a video that can tell you about the totem poles of Juneau. We still have a thriving Juneau community of natives. I've got lots of native friends. It's maybe 15, maybe 30% of the population. It's I mean, you'd have to ask them again what their opinion is on how things have gone. It was really rough back in the 50s. Just not right that they took all the kids and put them in schools, forced them to go, and they forced them to speak only English so that the children would grow from the age of 5. They were boarding schools until they reached adulthood and were released to go back without speaking Tlingit. And so it just left a whole generation unable to speak it. And so now the Tlingit culture is very relatively strong. They've been successful in their endeavors. And they're all members of tribal organizations. There are multiple ones depending on whether you're dealing with the Southeast Regional one, which is Sea Alaska. We drove right by that, their headquarters, or the smaller villages each have their own little community, but they're thriving economically as a group, doing business ventures. And so that's a good one. Here's your boat ramp. Want to go wash your truck off, you can go dunk it in the water. And of course, if you got a dog, you can have them run around here. Free parking for your boats. These guys, a lot of these guys have cabins up the Taku River. These are jet boats, and the Taku River is about 30 miles away. And you put your boat in, you run around, you've got a cabin, and it's further, it's up the river where they're actually with fresh water near them. They're glacially fed rivers, so they're not crystal clear, but the tributaries are. And it's a whole community. They're river rats. There are about 50 houses up there. It's close enough to Canada and far enough away from the coast that they often have a real summer. That they have mosquitoes up there that'll eat you alive, but they have summer where it gets hot and sunny, and they do stuff like play like you can do in the interior of Alaska. Southeast Alaska is an awful lot of slogging and cold and wet. We do get our beautiful days, but it doesn't quite dry out most days. So that is a problem. People in Douglas are just wonderful, nice, I'm not driving you up the back roads, although we certainly can. Let's just turn up and see you one of these roads. You guys care about this stuff? These are just my neighbors. I like these people. Steep little, stinking little roads. You know, I don't know about this thing when there's ice on the road, but they seem to survive. We got away from the pavement really quick. I'm going to drive real easy, try not to spin out my wheels. But I know a woman up here who has a beehive, and she does everything in her possibility to keep that hive alive. I know another woman up here with a couple of beautiful little goats, and I've had goats, so those are adorable and fun to come and say hi to. And yeah, this is Douglas. This is the old Douglas High School, that little thing, if you saw that building. They still have a gymnasium there that the community can use. But amazing that they didn't pave the road in front of the... So they call it the Mount Jumbo Gym. Okay, that makes sense. Yep. And yeah, they build the houses. These were built 100 and some years ago, and they built them up until people weren't willing to walk up any higher. And oftentimes the last house has 100 steps to get to the front door, and that's about the limit when people say nuts. Yeah, this left turn up the dirt road, I knew somebody lived up there. I think that's where the beehive is, but I'm not sure. Happy people, good community, sense of community, walking neighborhood. People get to know each other. Makes a big difference. Quality of life matters, doesn't it? Problem with Douglas is wintertime. Nominally, we have an 18-hour day in the summer, and we have an 18-hour night in the winter. So if you live in Douglas, though, when the sun sets in perhaps a month, it will not get past above those mountains at your house for a period of months. It's bright like it is today, right now, in the middle of those shorter hours, but on the far side of the channel, they'll have sunshine streaming in their windows on those bright days, and you won't hear. So I did live on North Douglas for a while, and the dark is tough. You just have to convince yourself that you want to go out and do things, even though every part of you says that's not quite a good idea. Here's the more recent school and another totem in front of it, and I wouldn't mind getting a book and studying it to figure out what these totems meant. So that's your visit to Douglas. I hope you enjoyed it, and come on up to Juneau. Look at that. We got some wildlife there going. And stay warm and dry, and please come to Juneau, and when you do, love it like I do.